Why couldn't James get very good footage of the claret?
Why?
Because he couldn't get the focus right. Hello, Mark here again from Cosmic Audio. Thanks for the comments and messages and loads of stuff we've had from you over the past week or so on the videos we've been uploading. That's very encouraging, so we'll keep going, we'll keep doing some more. If there's anything you want to see, then please let us know. If there's anything you'd like to know about, then give us a shout. Let us know what you'd like to see and we'll try our very best to do it. We've had lots of people saying that they really enjoyed the recording the jazz trio video. Can we do some more kinds of stuff like that? So I thought, as our kind of specialist thing here is live band recording. I mean, we do sort of album tracking and stuff like that, but I'm not the kind of person that likes to spend 10 days getting a bass drum sound. Right, I just get incredibly bored and think by the time you've got the sound right and been through 25 different microphones, the drummer's forgotten what he was going to play in the first place and everyone's bored and they've all gone off to smoke weed or whatever. So I like to get a band in, mic everyone up, get the vibe going, get a performance going. We do a lot of video work as well as audio work, so it's great to sort of video everything, and then the band have got something really useful they can put on their social media. And such was the case with the wonderful Emily Francis trio, who we recorded in August of last year. We've worked with Emily before, both with her trio. We did a video shoot for them at a gig at Colchester Arts Centre in 2018. We also worked with Emily. She's a keyboard player in the Katie Bush band. And she called last year and said, could we come up and do a video? And I was like, yes, 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 because Emily is brilliant. She's one of those keyboard players that she's got the knowledge there, she's got the education, she knows what she's doing, but she's really got her own sound, and she's a really emotional player. She's when she's doing the Katie Bush stuff, she can just play a single chord on a piano and I'm in tears. I don't know how she does it. It's incredible. She's a really good player. So it's great to hear someone that's got the education and the theory behind them, but can also put their own personality on it and really have their own sound. And that's great. We get a lot of musicians come through that have been very well educated, and a lot of them kind of sound a little bit the same, but then what tends to happen is a year or two down the line, a small percent sort of start to develop their own sound, and then if you hear something on the radio and you go, I know who played sax on that, without actually knowing who played sax on that, then that's great. If you can tell someone's playing just by hearing them on the radio, then that's fantastic. And Emily's got that. She's got her own unique sound, which is great. So it's a fairly simple setup. It's the Emily Francis trio, so there's three of them, funnily enough. Emily on keys, Jamie on drums, and Trevor on bass. It was kind of, it's not jazz, it's probably more it's more prog rock, really, very fusiony than jazz. So it's not like the video we did the other day on the Michael Horner trio, which was traditional jazz playing a standard. It's not that kind of jazz. It's more of an edgy kind of fusiony jazz, definitely very prog inspired. Where's that music coming from? It's coming out of my pocket. Well, let's just have a little listen to this a minute, shall we? I can hear music coming from somewhere. It's coming out of my pocket. My phone's just suddenly started to play this. It's quite good. It's a Dafydd E. Garreg-Wen, and it's a bit of Bryn Terfel there for you. Brilliant. Great. I don't know why my bum suddenly decided to play that, but it did. Anyway, where were we? Yes, so it's a jazz trio, but it's not jazz. It's fusiony, prog inspired jazz. So for the drums, we went for a more rock approach than we did with the Michael Horner trio, which was a more of a natural sounding kind of jazz approach. Kick in, kick out, let's just go through the channels. AKG D112 on the kick in, our MXL butchered U47 clone type thing on the outside of the kick. On the top of the snare, we had, what did we have on the snare? Was it an i5 or an SM57?
Audix i5.
An Audix i5 on the snare top. Snare bottom, nothing. I don't often use a snare bottom mic. A lot of people do. I don't often use it unless we're really going for a very super tight kind of isolated drums kind of sound. I don't tend to use a bottom mic an awful lot on the snare or a hi-hat mic, because generally when I do, I never use it. And then when I don't use it, I don't think, oh, I wish I'd used that. There's never really been a situation where I haven't used one and gone, oh, I wish I'd put a snare or I wish I'd put a mic under the snare. I prefer to try and get a more natural sound from the overheads. I mean, how many times do you go to a gig and see a band and lay on the floor with your head under the snare? You don't, do you? It's not a very natural sound to me, so I don't tend to bother micing it. But you could also argue how many times you go to a gig and lean on the floor tom. You don't, so why mic the floor tom? Well, yeah, so there's fors and against, but I generally don't tend to bother micing the bottom of a snare unless it's for a bigger budget recording where we've got a lot of time to do the tracking, in which case I will, because then obviously if it's there you don't have to use it, but if it's not there and you wish you'd done it, then it's not there. So it depends on the project, but generally for live stuff, as a rule, I won't bother, and didn't in this case. On the tom, just one tom, floor tom, I was going to go for dynamic, but we didn't. In this, a dynamic didn't sound quite right. We needed something a bit more open sounding, so I went for one of these. Now this is quite an unusual microphone in that it's a condenser microphone, and there's normally condenser microphones, you normally have a small diaphragm condenser, which is the pencil type, or a large diaphragm condenser, and this is in the middle. This is a medium diaphragm condenser. So small diaphragm condensers tend to be 12 mil on the actual capsule size or under, whereas large are 25 or an inch capsule, and this has got an 18 mil capsule, so it's kind of in between. The capsule is also unusual in this, in that it's aluminium rather than gold sputtered mylar or whatever's traditionally used in the large diaphragm condensers. It's got an aluminium capsule in it, so it kind of gives it a unique sound. It's a very natural sound. We've used these on strings, we've used them only this week on a choir. They're very good on woodwind, anything where you want a fairly natural sound, lots of sparkly top end. These are absolutely great. So that's what we used on the tom. Overheads, we used the small diaphragm condensers. Bass, we DI'd the bass. Thought there was something missing. There was just a lovely warm sound coming from Trev's bass cab, so we put a mic up on the bass cab as well, just a cardioid large diaphragm condenser, and just placed it. You'll hear this. We'll go through and I'll show you the spill that we got and stuff like that. There's no spill. If you position the mics carefully, you can have all the musicians in the same room. No one needs to wear headphones if you're doing a video shoot, and there's nothing worse than seeing a load of musicians sitting there with headphones on. It's like, and I personally hate tracking with headphones because I always feel really detached. I can't use in-ear monitors on stage either, because I just feel like I'm listening to an iPod rather than the guys and girls I'm playing with. So we mic'd the bass amp, and then Emily's keys, she had a Wurlitzer EP200 and a Prophet 6, both of which were DI'd. So the Wurlitzer we DI'd. We were talking on the video we did the other day with the Michael Horner trio. I was saying, should you leave reverb on your amp? If you play through a delay pedal, should you leave the delay on, or should you record everything dry and then add it afterwards? And this is a perfect example of when you should leave all that on, because Emily had a modulation pedal. She got a Mooga Fooga on there. She's got lots of different effects going on the Whirly, and those effects were affecting the way that she played. She performed differently having those effects on than she would have done if we'd have recorded everything dry and then added them afterwards. So that's how you make your decision. If you're a guitarist and you're playing the guitar and you're thinking, oh, should I have a slapback delay on this, or should I have a slightly longer delay, or should I have a big not quite sure, then leave it off. You can add that afterwards. Whereas if you're playing with a delay that's set to the tempo of the music, and those delays are becoming part of your solo, and it's an all-encompassing thing, then leave the delay on. Having trouble with my mouth today, words aren't coming out properly. Leave the delay on. And you know, that if it affects your performance, then by all means leave it on. So that's good, and that's basically it. 3 people, because it's a trio, funnily enough. So that's all the instruments. Let's have a little look. Oh, one other thing as well was that when we did the 3 top tips for recording drums video, I said that the most important thing is the drummer, and Jamie turned up with what can really only be described as a load of crap. The cymbals were cheap budget cymbals that were broken. It's literally, someone could have hammered out some saucepan lids 5 minutes before he started playing and they would have done. Even paper plates or something like that he could have used. And when he was putting the cymbals up, we looked at the cymbals and it was like, okay. Just cracked, bits missing, chunks missing out of them. But it's Jamie, and Jamie is a fantastic drummer. He's an absolutely incredible drummer. So he just got behind the kit, just went, yeah, that's all right, move that a bit, brilliant. And poof, that was it. That's your drum sound. So the most important thing is the drummer, and then the second most important thing is what they're hitting, and then the third most important thing is the room that you're recording it in, and then really nothing else matters. You can use budget microphones, you can use expensive microphones. If you go out and spend £3,000 on a stereo pair of Neve preamps and then wonder why your overheads don't have all this extra sparkle or a mojo that you were missing before, it's nothing to do with the mic preamp or what you're plugging into it, and everything to do with the performer and the drum kit and the room. You can mic up a rubbish drummer with literally, you could put an XLR adapter on a pair of Apple earbuds and hang them over the kit of a good drummer and it would sound incredible. Or you could spend, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds on high-end microphones and preamps and put them and mic up a rubbish drummer on a really good kit and then wonder why you've got a crap drum sound. Drummer, room and the kit, they're the most important things, particularly the drummer. So this again is a perfect example of that. Jamie was probably playing about 20 quid's worth of cymbals, if that, and it sounds amazing. He's just great. So let's have a little look at what we've got going on. We'll solo some mics. A couple of you said that when I soloed stuff before, I didn't actually give you a chance to listen to anything because I was waffling on too much. So I'll try and take that into account today and shut up a bit. I'll play you a bit of the whole track first. Okay, so let's solo some stuff. This is the kick in. So that's the D112. About 6 inches or so inside the drum, about 6 inches or so from the front head, from the head that's actually been hit with the pedal. So listen to the kick out. So you can hear we've got a bit of spill there, but it doesn't matter too much. Both together, that's kick in and kick out. Drums are about to stop, so let's just move it on a bit. Okay, so have a listen to the snare. So again, quite heavily gated, like we did with the video we did with Roger the other day. The snare is quite heavily gated on this, and it's also triggered as well. So it's triggering a sample. Let me put the sample in, and you'll hear that. So I thought it was missing some of that splat. So when we were mixing it, we just added a sample in over the top. Let's solo the snare with the kick. And let's bring the overheads in. And the floor tom. So that's the entire drum sound. Very simple setup. 2 mics on the kick, 1 on the snare. listen to that floor tom. These mics sound great on toms. Again, the tom's fairly heavily gated on this. Let's just solo that and we can have a listen to the floor tom. Let's just go to a bit where he's played it. So in with everything else, it's just a great tom sound. Bit of reverb on there, just a bit of sort of ambient reverb. And Jamie really went nuts at the end of this track as well. It's like each limb is playing something in a completely different time signature. It's just incredible. And the cymbals sound great. I mean, they're rubbish cymbals, really rubbish cymbals, and they sound great because he's playing them. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Let's solo the bass. Here we go. A bit further into the track. So we've got, so this is the DI. So it's just a really clean signal. Not particularly inspiring. It's a DI bass at the end of the day, which is why we chose to add the microphone in rather than going for any kind of amp simulation or something like this. Now listen to what careful mic positioning can do. So listen to the spill we're getting from the bass microphone. I'll solo just the bass mic. That's, again, it was like the sax on the Michael Horner trio. It might as well have been recorded in a different room. If you position your mics carefully, and you've got our live room, we designed to be fairly dead because it's not big enough to sound great. So we decided to design it so it doesn't have a sound at all. It's very dead. There's quite a bit of diffusion in there, but just so you don't go mad when you're in there for hours at a time and you're having a conversation and it doesn't suck all the life out of your voice. So there's some reflection in the room, but in the sort of critical areas, it's super dead, and that proves it. So we had the mic pointing away with its bum end. So cardioid microphone, your pickup pattern goes out the front of the microphone like that, and at the back of the microphone you get very little sound. The sound goes in, but it's not picked up from the back of the microphone. So you point that towards your drums, and then you get minimal spill coming from that. Again, Emily wasn't wearing headphones. So even though we DI'd her keys, she had a monitor in the room and she was listening through the monitor, and we're not even getting any of that in the bass mic at all. So that with the DI, you get a nice full bass sound. Let's just pop the drums in with that as well. So as I said, Emily and Trevor came up after the tracking day and after we did the video shoot, and we spent a day in here and just went through the mix on both the songs to get it. They came up with that. They did exactly what you should do. They came up with some reference tracks and said we want it to sound a bit like this. I'd listened to the tracks and was like, oh yeah, great. Well, you kind of sound like that anyway. So it was just kind of little tweaks. But that's great when a band come in and they go, we want to sound like this or we want to sound like that, but while still being us. They had a very clear idea of how they wanted everything to sound, and we got there. So that's always good. Okay, that's that. Let's have a little listen to the keys. So Emily's Whirly is really gnarled up with some of the effects she was using, which is great. It's almost just like it's going through a really, really out of shape tape machine. So again, it's just a DI from the output of the last effects pedal she was using. And we've just put a bit of reverb on it this end. And then the Prophet, which is adding some nice, lovely synthness at the end with the whirly over the top, just a great sound. Let's put everything in together. So there we go. The computer's struggling to play everything and record the screen capture video as well. So you might be hearing a couple of dropouts there. That's our poor little old Mac going, oh, stop the suffering. So again, we'll play you the whole video at the end of this. Let's just really quickly go through the mix because there's not much to go through. The drums, I did pretty much what we did with the Michael Horner stuff. Slight bit of compression on the kick. Let's just play a bit. So not much, just a dB or two coming off there. Boosted this. I normally boost a bass drum at around 50 to 60 hertz. This one's a little bit higher. This one I actually boosted at 70 because that's where it sounded. That's where it sounded best. Oh yeah, here we go. Mac's struggling now. Now graphics are appearing. So let's just stop that, and I'll just go through and show you roughly what we've done. So there's a slight boost there. Cut at 3.5K because 3.5K is generally a horrible sound on drums. It can sound just yuck, so I quite often notch out a little bit of 3.5K. That's the kick in. Kick out, similar story, so tiny little bit of compression, again a slight boost, this time at 60. Nothing else on there, and again with the SSL EQ, a slight boost at 50, and then a slight boost in the high mids at around 5K, just to bring a little bit of the snap out. Snare. So again, standard fare, gate on the snare there, little boost at 3.2, high shelf, bit of a boost there. Little bit of a cut at, what's that, set at 1.19, so 1.2, little bit of a cut, and then a boost at around 100, just to put a bit of the body into it. Little bit of compression, and then some shimmer and some thickness from the Revival plugin. So pretty much what we did with Roger's kit the other day. Floor tom is again a gate, little bit of EQ, little bit of compression. So we've bought out some 6.5K there, and a bit of a cut at 560, and then a little bit of a boost at around 130, just to bring some of the nice low end out of the floor tom. That's that. Overhead's just tiny bit of compression and a tiny little bit of sparkle on the top, and again a bit of a cut. What's that? 1K near enough, and a little bit of a cut at 100, just to get the drums sitting in nicely with or the overhead sitting in nicely with the close mics. And that's it. Bass, you can see I did absolutely nothing to the bass at all. No compression, no EQ, just the combined DI and amp sound. Sounded great, so we left it alone. Nothing to do there. Trevor certainly didn't need any compression. He's a very even, very good player, so nothing there to iron out or anything. That's fairly easy. With the Whirly, I don't think we did much. No, hardly anything. So again, bit of compression. Excuse me. A little bit of a boost at just over 3K. Little bit of a boost at 1.5K, and that's it. And then we just put it through the London virtual tube thing, just to gnarl it up a bit and give it a little bit more edge, a little bit more aggression on there. It's just like a kind of drive plug-in to give it a bit of extra oomph. Let's just solo that if the computer will allow me, and we can do a bypass so you can hear what it's doing. So there's the Whirly once it gets going a bit more aggressively. So it's quite a gnarly sound. So if you take the plugins off, you can see it's still quite a gnarly sound, which is great. That's exactly what Emily wanted. So that's just the processing is just really bringing it to life and giving it a little bit of thickness and a little bit of distortion with the extra plugins there. Back to the whole track. Drumming's mental. So that's it, really. There's not much else to say on that one. Great band, great performance, and that's what it's all about. If you've got a great band and a great performance, then, as I said the other day, you can literally mic them up with anything. And as long as you're not doing anything technically wrong, then, you know, fantastic. You don't need to get the tape measure out and measure how far the bass amp is from the hi-hat and then start aligning channels to try and get everything in phase and all that malarkey. Mic everything up, listen to it. If it sounds good, it is good. If it doesn't sound good, then work out why it doesn't sound good. It probably won't be what kind of microphone you're using on it. It might be where you've put the microphone, or it might be the actual instrument itself. But if it sounds good, then it is good. So don't get too hung up on the technicalities, especially when you're starting out. Get the basics right. Don't go out and spend £3,000 on a preamp thinking that's the answer to everything. It really isn't. You can use the preamps in any decent modern interface these days and they'll be fine. Everything we record in this studio goes through the PreSonus preamps in this desk. There's a remote stage box in the live room which is connected to this with a Cat5 cable, which means we get zero latency monitoring. We can do everything on faders, super easy. The preamps are great. They're not fantastic. You could get quieter preamps with a bit more headroom, but there's 32 of them, and they all sound the same. So you're starting to get a sort of harmonious recording that's easier to mix because all the mics are going through the same preamps. We've got the Focusrite Claret there as well, which we'll use on a more sensitive recording. If it's quieter, when we were recording the choir the other night, we used the Claret just because the preamps are a little bit quieter. They've got a tiny bit more headroom, but there's really not much in it. I'd have been quite happy to use this, but we took the Claret just because it's that little bit quieter and we weren't sure how loud or quiet, what the dynamics of the choir were going to be. But yeah, so that's the advice. Stick your mics up in front of your drummer or your guitarist or your piano player, and as long as you're using the right kind of microphone on the right source, and you're going through a decent interface into a computer, if it sounds awful, it's probably not the fault of the equipment. It's probably something you're doing, or it might be down to the performer. So you need to go back and iron that out and not sort of try and fix it with technology. Fix it with actual, the real thing. Find out what the problem is, and then take it from there. So we'll do another video on different types of microphone and what type of microphone you should use on what type of instrument and when. So already you can see that we've used dynamics on a tom, but we've also used condensers on a tom, when you'd use a dynamic, when you'd use a condenser, etc, etc. We'll talk a little bit more about those as well. Someone messaged me and said, when would you use a small diaphragm condenser versus a large diaphragm condenser? So we'll do a video on microphones and types and things like that. And a few of you have also messaged me and said, what sample rate do we record at? We record everything at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit 48 kilohertz. Never record at 96, and there's technical reasons for that. So I'm also going to do a video on sample rates and try and demystify some of the sort of snake oil surrounding those. So hope you enjoyed this one. We'll leave you with the fabulous Emily Francis Trio and see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.